Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. In this video, I'm going to be fixing my mistake that I made on Sansa Stark. Let's get started.
Alright, so for this video, this isn't actually like a one-to-one guide on how to fix your minis. This is just kind of how I go about fixing some of my mistakes. So if you watched the previous video, you'll know that I wasn't really happy with the Crusader skin on the skin of Sansa Stark here. It came out a little bit too dark for me and didn't have excellent coverage. It could have just been how I based the miniature. It could have been my fault. I still have some experimenting to do with it to see exactly what happened with that. So I'm just going over with some Tan Flesh by Pro Acryl here and covering up all the skin parts here, and this will give us a nice even coat across the whole model. That's always a good tool to use. If your speed paints fail you, always just go back to acrylics. Acrylics are great at what they do. They take a little bit more time, but you get great results with them. And when covering up like this, you'll want to do probably 2 thin coats of the acrylic over the part you're covering up. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you can have a little bit of that color poking through if you don't do 2 thin coats. So just keep that in mind. I know you've probably heard that a million times if you've watched any videos on this hobby, but it's true and it's really important. And honestly, you can do 3. The more thin your paint, the better it's going to turn out. I mean, unless you've gotten your paint to the point where it's water, basically. And as you can see there, after that step, after 2 thin coats, we've got a nice even tone across the entirety of the skin here. We'll go ahead and switch over to some flesh wash and add some definition and shadows here. And basically this is really all I do, is use these 2 colors and a little bit of white to highlight sometimes in the skin tone. And just basically do like a balancing act until I'm happy with it. So it's a little blurry here, but I'm pretty much just coating the entirety of the skin here, really trying to avoid the the blue of the dress there, and all of the parts that we painted before. So just keep that in mind and add some wash all over the skin here. You can kind of use your brush to push more of the wash in the areas that have deeper recesses and wipe it away on the flatter areas as well. And as you can see with that, we created a nice base tone, dark tone kind of for the model. And now we'll start doing some highlighting from there. So we're going to take some matte white and mix that in with our skin tone here. And we're just going to slowly start building up some highlights and some lighter tones on the skin here. Trying to leave the dark tones in the recesses of the model. And I actually ended up going over this again with the flesh wash. It was a little bit too bright and a little bit too different to what I put on earlier, and then use the flesh wash to really seal everything in and tie everything together. So keep that in mind when you're doing this step. You'll want to mix this a little bit less than I did. I went a little bit too bright with the white, but if you kind of build it up a little bit slower than I did, you should have better results. So what we're really looking to do with this step is, 1, bring up some of the highlights and add a little bit of a lighter tone to the raised areas in the face here. And 2, really just kind of tie everything together. Really blend together the shadows and the highlights here. So keep those 2 things in mind while you're working on this step. And if you have, like what I have here, where the face is a little bit too bright, just go ahead and take a very thin layer of the flesh wash and cover the face in that, and it should tie everything together for you. And as you can see here, I'm just trying to avoid like the eyes, a little bit of the line of the mouth, underneath the nose, right underneath the hair on her forehead, just the certain areas that would still be a little bit darker with the light we're hitting her. And we're trying to just brighten up everything else the light would be hitting. And take your time with this. You may want your original skin tone next to this to just kind of bounce back and forth. That's kind of what I do, is just a little bit of back and forth until I'm happy with how it turned out. Like here, I was pretty happy with the result there, so we'll move on to the next step, which I figured since we're doing a little bit more detail, we may as well do a little bit more detail on the dress as well. So we'll switch over to some Void Shield Blue acrylic, and with this we're just going to catch some of the raised areas and highlights on the dress here. This is basically edge highlighting. The best way that I've found to do this is just go at an angle with the side of your brush, and you will have a lot more control than if you try to use the tip of your brush. And we did do a bit of a zenithal highlight on this model, so it is a little bit darker on the bottom and brighter on the top because we use speed paints. That really benefits when you're using speed paints, so we don't really have to do too many highlights on the top of the model. We'll do a couple, but not that many. We're really just picking out the lines and folds in the dress that are really sticking out. And yeah, in terms of coming back to a model, this is the best way that I've found to get a fresh perspective on a model, and especially if you're getting frustrated with it or just annoyed with it, you know, you can set it aside, not think about it for a couple of days, paint something else, and when you come back to it, I always find that I have a different perspective. The problem that I had seems to be easier to fix. You know, I seem to come up with a solution faster, and just seems to be overall a more enjoyable experience. So if you're ever getting frustrated with a model, keep that in mind. Just set it aside, you know, unless you know, as long as you're not in a huge rush to get it on the battlefield, then I would say set it off to the side, give it a day or two, and come back to it, and you should be good. And that will about wrap it up for this video. We'll give you some final shots here in a moment. Thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel. We really appreciate all of the support we've been getting with growing our new YouTube channel. So thank you for that. Be sure to check out the top link in the description to take part in the giveaway. And as always, guys, happy wargaming.